Red Panda Koala is a UFO researcher and fantastically talented documentary filmmaker. His documentaries are taking YouTube by storm, and as more and more people discover his channel, it's only a matter of time before he explodes in popularity. The UFO phenomenon is his main topic of exploration. His videos are of extreme value to anybody wanting to educate themselves on the phenomenon while being entertained at the same time. As always, we've taken the time to create timestamps, and they can be found in the description. So, Red, we're going to start off with something pretty heavy, arguably the most profound and important question I'm going to ask you today. How and why did you come up with the name Red Panda Koala?
The name Red Panda Koala. I just like both of those animals, which I don't know if you know, like a red panda, it looks like a raccoon. A lot of people don't know what that is, but it's like really cute looking animal. And the koalas, I just like koalas too. Same reason. They're kind of chill, they're kind of low key. And when I was coming up with the name, I didn't really know. I was like, do I want to put UFO in my name? Do I not? And then I was like, oh, I'll just make something totally like not even related to anything. So then it's like, it'll give me kind of like a nice little buffer or cushion to kind of like figure out like how to edit and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If I had some super good name and I got a bunch of like views when I was early on editing, I don't think it would have been good. So
your first videos were pretty cool, though. I did enjoy your trailer for your channel a few years ago. And you started off pretty strong, I would say.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, there is definitely a difference. But yeah, it's fun. It's learning, right? We're all learning.
Yeah. So two favorite animals. Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I would say definitely red panda is for sure like the favorite animal, and then koala I would say after all this time now with the name and whatnot, probably.
So originally koala was like third or fourth something, and now he's made it up to second.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. What was second place before koala? All the hard hitting questions here.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I like dolphins too.
Strong.
But yes, he doesn't have as much of a ring, I feel like.
No, strong favorite animal, but no, it doesn't have the same ring. And now obviously it's got a great ring because it's becoming better known, and people like recognize that channel name, and it's
I know, right? It's so cool. Crazy.
Red Panda Koala, like it rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, and I like Red. I like being called Red too. So yeah, like all my UFO friends online call me Red and whatnot. So it's fun.
Nice. Yeah, you got a new nickname. So tell us a little bit more about your background, like how you became a documentary maker, if that's what you call yourself, how you got into UFOs, anything else you want to share, like about your background, just your life story, really.
Yeah. So I had graduated college in 2016, and I was doing like political science stuff. Okay. And then the political situation in America, I was like not really trying to do political work. So I was like, what could I do? And I really like history. So originally I was going to do Cold War history. So like different CIA coups and whatnot. And then as I was like saving up for my computer to do that and kind of like script writing, like different like videos in that subject matter. That's when the 2017 New York Times stuff broke. Yeah. And I had never done a deep dive on UFOs. They just kind of existed in that kind of like casual spot that they exist for a lot of people of like, I haven't looked into it, but I have this strong opinion that it's probably dumb. Not like totally dumb, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then right around that time I did a deep dive, and then I was like, there's a lot of good, there's like a lot of really good information out there on this subject in books and lectures. And I was like, people like really just don't have that much time to like read all these books, and you know what I mean? So I just made a channel. I shifted from Cold War to UFO because also like after the 2017 thing, I just became super addicted. I'm sure you could relate, right? If you're making a channel about it. Yeah. Like read about this stuff every day when I'm using the bathroom or like before bed, just reading on some really random site.
Yeah.
So it kind of helped like I don't know, manage like my obsession with the topic. And then also too, I'm sure you like everyone in this space can recognize this sentiment of like you try and talk to someone about it, and it's like there's just so many layers you have to get to first to even like get to what you want to talk to, like someone who has no clue about UFOs. So it's kind of a way for me to like maybe get my family and friends to be able to talk about this stuff, because it's like, for example, like trying to explain why Tom DeLonge is relevant, or like you know what I mean? It's like you sound crazy just in a kitchen at a party or something. So that's about it. And then more and more stuff just continues coming out. So it's been fun. It's been cool. It's UFO Twitter is like pretty fun for the most part, I think. And just kind of watching all the developments happen. It's been pretty crazy.
Yeah. So tell me, before 2017, you said you were kind of like, like kind of meh about UFOs, and I remember as well for myself, like that was that as well. Those articles is where I went from, kind of a little bit indifferent. I think I was interested, but that was when I began my deep dive, I think, or
Yeah.
around that time period anyway. It might have been just before if they were like rumored the articles were coming out or something, but around that time is when I fully started a deep dive into it. But before that happened, like, do you remember much about your views on it? Did you just dismiss it? Were you kind of interested from a sci-fi perspective? Did you think it was based in any reality? Like, do you not really remember? For me, it's kind of a blur, like my views beforehand. But
Yeah, right. It's weird, and it's like now it's such a big part of our lives. Like,
yeah.
um, I remember on long car drives growing up, like Coast to Coast AM,
Hmm.
and I remember being interested in it. And I remember my parents did have one family friend who was into UFOs. So I feel like when I was like 8 or so, he would like tell me about them, and I would listen to it on the way home. But yeah, and yeah, it wasn't like I hated UFOs or anything. It was kind of like what you were saying, like indifferent. Like I just didn't have an opinion. But it's also and this kind of goes back into like the channel too. And I'm sure you've experienced this too. It's like this is one of those subjects where people have such a strong opinion with like having done no research.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that in itself is just kind of like a pretty strange and interesting like phenomena, like with the population.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, that's where I was, just kind of indifferent with no opinion, no formed opinion. And then I like to think that had I been out of like college for a few more years, I would have gotten into it on my own.
Mm.
Because like I just go down super deep rabbit holes now, right? I'm sure you do too. Like now we're just like at the bottom of all the rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Uh, but I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't have, but I think I would have. But yeah, then 2017 happened, and now it's like right in front of everyone's face, and just trying to make sense of like what the heck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure you could probably relate to this too. Like when I first saw the 2017 stuff, I was just like the beginning of Arrival or something. I was like, what the heck is this on TV? And it's like no one cares. It's like the strangest phenomena as well.
yeah, a little bit like Don't Look Up as well. Like all this is happening and these big things. You've seen the film Don't Look Up?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like all
That was
these kind of
classic.
crazy headlines and crazy videos and pilots telling their what they saw, and
Yeah.
everybody's just like, yeah, what's going on? I haven't heard anything
Yeah.
about this, and yeah, so you
I
needed somewhere to
remember.
vent as well with your channel. You
Yeah,
remember?
exactly. I remember when that movie came out, like the UFO Twitter was like feeling all validated and whatnot.
Yeah,
Don't look
yeah.
up.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's so
it was a
funny.
really good film. Like they nailed it in terms of like climate change, obviously, but also very much in terms of this phenomenon, and what
Yeah.
is going on with this. Like there's these people that used to work in government. They're literally telling us this stuff, and people are just completely disregarding it. And yeah,
And
but
it's like a this week it's like Obama like on TikTok like dancing
mm,
saying like UFOs are real, like it's
yeah,
just reality's a meme sometimes.
and actually mentioning aliens as well. And
Yeah,
it's like
it's get
yeah,
out to vote, like aliens are real now, like what?
yeah. Are you ever going to do a video about like Obama and or presidents and this kind of thing? Sorry, it just popped into my head.
No, yeah,
Like
yeah.
because he used to be very, like he'd kind of be all like just laughing it off, but also kind of keeping his, keeping very cool about it. And then obviously more recently, last few years, he's started to say a bit more like there are things that are flying around. We don't know what
Yeah.
they are. And it's kind of been a bit of an evolution. And he's a very interesting character, I think, because he handles himself very, professionally in that sense. So yeah, have you
Mm.
thought about doing something about him?
Yeah, I think I would for sure. There's enough, I feel like, information to make one about the Clintons that would be like long
Mm,
enough. But
yeah,
Obama, I don't know. It might have to be like a short, like 10-minute one. There's not that much that I found so far.
yeah,
Although there is the whole John Podesta connection. So I guess if you want to like count like all the Tom DeLonge email, like the WikiLeaks emails, I think took place while he was partially Obama's senior advisor. So there is that. That's a big connection, I guess, right?
yeah.
Um,
And I bet the
and then
more you look
yeah,
into it, as with everything else, you'll find more connections. You'll be like,
it's
oh, no
crazy.
way. Like this guy as
It's
well is related to that.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like every president has some crazy UFO connection that I didn't realize. And it's like what? There's
Yeah.
a one I just found out that might be interesting too is Joe Biden. He had this advisor named Claiborne Pell. Have you heard of that? Have that guy?
Not really. I
It's
don't think so.
that's another wild rabbit hole to look up. He helped get like the remote viewing stuff
Mm,
declassified in the 90s,
yeah.
and he had like this advisor who claimed to be like a contactee,
Okay.
but he was Joe Biden's like mentor, I guess you could say, when Joe Biden first got into Congress and when his like family died in that car accident. Like he was really close with this guy of all people. So I was like, oh wow, like
Yeah.
they all have some connection. So I do think it'd be cool to do kind of like a rapid fire of like although their connections really quickly.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, that's definitely. To go back a little bit, then, I just another question about kind of how you got into these, you making documentaries and things like
Mhm.
that. There's a question from one of my two patrons, Joe. I'll put his Twitter in the description. He said, "Please tell me about your influences as a documentary maker. The style kind of reminds me of James Fox in the way it's more objective and serious than an older generation of paranormal media." So yeah, he wants to know a bit about your influences, and I'd love to hear that too. And obviously,
Um,
what a compliment to be compared to James Fox as well.
right.
That's
I know.
high
Thank you,
praise.
Joe.
Yeah.
Um, uh, who do I like? I mean I like Think Anomalous. Like that's a great channel, right? I like that kind of immersive kind of story
Mm.
where it feels kind of like almost in between like a movie and a book and a story. We were kind of talking before the show of how I don't like to show my face in the documentaries because I feel like it helps with the immersion and like picking timely royalty free music and stuff like that. If I was to cut to my face, I feel like it wouldn't kind of help people get like feel like they're in the 50s or whatever.
Yeah.
So I feel like yeah, a lot of the YouTube documentary like history um channels that you'll see, like I think what Wars and Generals and stuff like that. I want to get more into like having animated maps. And I'm
Okay.
hoping Tupacabra can help me with that. Um so yeah.
That would be cool for like UFO waves and flaps and things like that. Or
Yeah. You know those cool Vox maps.
did you have anybody else you wanted to talk about in like influences or anything like that? Or should we
Um
jump on to another question?
no, I mean I do like James Fox, you know, I feel like he gets a lot of really good like info
Mm.
because there's a lot of you know, whatever the stigma or whatever when the subject is covered. But also I like sightings and stuff too. I feel like they'll have their own little unique place in the history of this subject in America and whatnot. So I don't know.
Yeah. But you're trying to carve out your own style anyway, and
Yeah, right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah, and it's working. People are loving it. Um, I wanted to know how many videos like you plan in advance. Is it like kind of just one or two, or have you got kind of a whole strategy going, like a long-term strategy? And can you share any spoilers?
Yeah. So basically how I do it is and I recommend this for people too, just for their own record keeping.
Hmm.
Make a Discord with only yourself. And then I have like the channels, like I have like the flying saucer people, flying saucer events, the in between era, which is what I call in between like the end of Blue Book and 2017.
Yeah,
And then I'll have like Psi research, Soviet Union UFO stuff, and then have channels for like different topics. And then that makes it really easy to collect information like as you're going along researching. Cause I think everyone could also relate to this where it's like you're researching one thing and then before you know it, you have like 350 tabs open of like different
totally.
like old like yeah mystery school knowledge and stuff. So just to kind of like keep track of all that stuff, I have that Discord because you're able to use Discord pretty easily on your phone and on your computer. So
Yeah,
then I just put stuff in there, and then once like I feel like something is like pretty interesting or like has like enough content to like make a pretty interesting video, like I'll just kind of have like a mental note of it, and then yeah, I kind of have like I'm working on like the next two ish at a time. Yeah, and then so right now I'm working on the conclusion of like Project Blue Book and all whatnot, and the emphasis is kind of trying to answer the question of like how did science like turn its back, and I even say like abdicate its role.
yeah.
Um,
And that one should be out already right now by the time this is aired.
yes,
So
hopefully
yeah,
yes.
yeah, cool.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
how?
because
No,
continue.
carry on. Sorry.
No, all good. I forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, I
Sorry.
was filling space.
I was just gonna say, like, how many videos? Yeah, like roughly, have you got in the back of your mind, like, five maybe ahead, or like, you got enough plans to kind of take you through to next year, mid next year, like,
I think I have
yeah,
enough to make to be honest, probably like 70 pretty solid videos. But in terms of just like when I'm actually like collecting and script writing and like
Mm.
spending the time to research, I'm usually in like working like 2 to 3 in advance.
Yeah.
But really trying to focus because yeah, then it's so easy to get sidetracked at researching, and it's frustrating because I want to just go on all these tangents, but I'm like, okay, I gotta
Yeah.
really focus on this right now. Like,
I feel you with that so much.
yeah.
But you got like 70. So do you kind of, are they going to be like some kind of order, some kind of strategy, or is it just you're going to go through them and like pick what feels right when you finish? You know, when you finish one, you're like, okay, I'm going to pick which one feels right for next, and then so on.
Yeah, exactly like that. And then
Yeah.
also too, YouTube like allows you to have the playlist function or anything. So
Yeah.
like this one technically is going to be like the end of the flying saucer era because it's going to cover like the end of Blue Book and science abdication or whatever. But I do want to like come back to this era or whatever. So then when people click on my channel, like I'll be able to organize it in a way where it'll
Yeah.
be kind of like chronological by group.
Yeah, even if you don't do it chronologically, you'll be able to fix it
Yeah.
up so they can watch it like that. Okay, cool. Let's jump into talking a little bit more about the phenomenon rather than your channel. I'm sure we can kind of we're going to be talking about your channel all the way through in parts because obviously it's relevant to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask you on what your thoughts are on the kind of the UFO and nukes connection, which obviously you've made a really awesome video about that, and which also featured Robert Hastings, which by the way had a comment from Robert Hastings, which was so cool. How did that feel, by the way? Was that must have felt great?
That was pretty cool. Yeah, he did kind of correct me on some things, which I'm glad he did, right? And
Yeah,
I've tried to contact him since, and he's kind of like he's in his recluse stage, I would say.
he's hard to
So
reach, right?
yeah, he's
I want to get him
no,
on this podcast as well, but like I just
yeah, I'm sure you've gotten some like wonderful emails, but that was cool. Like he's done a lot of great work, so he's allowed to do that. Who cares?
Yeah,
But
absolutely. But yeah, so you've done that video, which everybody should go and check out if they haven't already watched. And you featured in a video recently with Jesse Michelle's American Alchemy.
yeah,
Um,
Jesse Michaels, I think is how
Jesse
he
Michaels, my
pronounces.
bad.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in your French mode.
yeah,
um, yeah, that was cool. I didn't expect him to like edit it in with Lou, so that was pretty interesting. That was pretty cool to be
that
like I've
was
still never
cool.
met
Yeah,
Lou Elizondo, but I'm in an episode with him, so
yeah.
that was cool.
Yeah, when I saw like that it was you and Lou, I was like, oh, cool. Is Red gonna be like in a room chatting with
Yeah,
Lou? Like
I
this
know.
is
That'd have been cool.
not this time, next time maybe. But I
Remote
thought the
viewing.
video was really cool. I thought you came across well. Yeah. But yeah, so tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are. And obviously, you've done loads of research on that connection. I kind of don't even really feel like I have to say alleged connection anymore or like potential connection.
Right.
Like, there's quite clearly some kind of connection there. Do you have any speculations on it? And it is speculation, obviously, to a
Yeah.
degree. But based on your research and your understanding and everything, just kind of spitball for a bit. Give me your thoughts.
Sometimes I do wonder if it's like, and even with the military stuff, it's like we have so many sensors around this stuff.
Mm,
Like, it gets seen a lot, but I do think they're interested. I'm personally of the belief that like they're not totally benevolent. I think a lot of them are more agnostic to us,
hmm
just because humans have done a lot of really horrible stuff to each other and the environment in the past
Yeah.
with no intervention. So I don't know if necessarily they would prevent like I'm in the camp where I'm like, oh, they would prevent World War III because they did let us like nuke Japan and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think I've and then yeah, right. It's all speculation, but some of the contactees will say like they're told that nukes like interfere in other dimensions and stuff like
Mm,
that. And this is when you start getting like frequencies and stuff like that. So I could see that being a thing, and they did seem like super interested like right off the bat.
yeah.
So I would I would wager it's probably just more interest and maybe self-preservation of like these other things we can't see than it is like protecting humans. But
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of potential, like what ifs and what could be. Like
Yeah.
I say, I think there's definitely some kind of connection. What you say about it affecting something somewhere else, like some people say that, like quantum entanglement vibes, like
Yeah.
something here affecting something over there. It's hard to get your head around, obviously, but I don't know. I don't think they're here to wipe us out. I don't think they're here to invade us. Obviously, they could be,
Yeah.
and I kind of hope they're not, but I don't think so. Whether, like you say, whether they would stop World War III if it comes to it, It's anybody's guess. Obviously, I'd like to hope and think that maybe, um, but whether they would or not, yeah, we have no way of knowing. It's pure speculation. Like you say, they didn't stop us nuking Japan, or they haven't stopped plenty of atrocities in the past. But maybe if it was something that was going to wipe out all the life on the planet, for all intents and purposes, maybe that would be different. Maybe that's where they draw the line. But yeah,
they're just, do you pick up on I feel like there's some kind of like negative, like end of the world kind of vibe that some UFO people kind of have sprinkled into their like theories or lore, which
yeah.
always kind of makes me go like, like, right,
You,
like,
you know Steve Bassett? Do you know Steve Bassett?
yeah, he's did a bunch of like lobbying and still does lobbying efforts and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had him on here, and he like talked for probably 40 minutes or something about like nuclear war, the threat of nuclear war, and how like we're in a situation now where either it's just a race between nuclear war and us wiping ourselves out, or disclosure. That's his belief, is that like if disclosure comes first, then we avert the nuclear disaster, and if we don't get disclosure, he believes that we're inevitably gonna wipe ourselves out pretty quickly, I think, as well. And he's really passionate about that. Really passionate.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who are saying that too, like prevent the end of the world by disclosing, and
Yeah.
we'll see.
Do you think that
We'll
would
see.
change like humanity's how we act? Obviously, we, as in like me and you and people, just the normal people, we don't necessarily need that to stop
Yeah.
us doing horrible things. But do you think it would change how the elite and the governments and things handle themselves? Do you think people would say, okay, let's put down the nukes. We're all brothers and sisters. You know, it doesn't matter what we look like, where we're from, what our cultural background is, all this kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know, and it's so hard to guess too, because right, I feel like I feel like 2017, I feel like all the people who were into UFOs before 2017
Mm,
like wouldn't have predicted society's reaction to 2017 and kind of this stuff. How we were talking about a little earlier of like all these people are saying some pretty crazy things and like no one really cares.
yeah,
So who knows? Maybe like no one would even care. But also I do think people get a lot of their cues from the media and whatnot. So I feel like if the media was like constantly running stories of like this is crazy, a lot of people would start
yeah,
being like, "Whoa, this is so crazy now."
yeah,
So
yeah,
I think it depends a lot on what the media does, but hopefully maybe. But then also I feel like there's also been such a strong current of like Project Bluebeam being
mm,
a thing in conspiracy circles. I feel like there'll be a huge outcry of that. And then I don't know if you've seen, but I've noticed a lot of like religious channels that cover this stuff, mostly Christian, just because that's what I've been like finding.
yeah.
A lot of them view this kind of under the angle of like Book of Revelations, like these
Like end
things
of the
are
world stuff.
demonic, Collins Elite stuff. So I think there will be some factions that kind of get pretty intense with it.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But then again, it could also be where no one cares. Like,
Yeah, I think everybody would be different. Like I have some like strong Christians in my family, and some of them, for example, some of them,
yeah,
this is a weird thing to say, but they don't necessarily kind of feel like it would alter their religion at all. Like they feel like, you know, kind of, and I've heard it from other religions too, like that there's room in there for God, or whoever is God in any particular religion, to have, you know, other worlds or other, you know, beings
yeah,
that he's created in other places. So I think a lot of religions would be able to handle it, but then some would struggle. And again, everybody's different. Everybody handles things differently. Like you saw, like how we handled the pandemic. Like some people took it in stride, and some people didn't. And some, you know, everyone and every organization and every country handle it differently. And I guess it would be the same. I do think there would be a significant chunk, like you mentioned, like if Biden came out tomorrow and said there's an extraterrestrial presence on Earth, and say the media didn't pick up on it and just basically ignored it, I think half the people wouldn't really even know about it, and then the other half
yeah,
would be like, do you think that was real, or do you think, you know, do you think that was just nonsense? Like, you know, yeah, I don't know what it would take to get everybody on the same page at this point.
yeah. And that's like a can of worms too, because I feel like it's like a double uh mind, like mind melt or whatever, melts your brain or whatever, where it's like one, the existence of UFOs, and then two, it's like the fact that the government was able to like lie to you and like deceive you like this. I feel like that's gonna be a shock for people once it really internalizes.
Mm.
Because at least for me, it was like I feel like right people, it's like okay, well, what is even real now? Like, you know what I mean? Like is
Yeah.
Alaska real? Like what? Like so
Yeah.
I feel like, and especially because there's all this stuff of like fighting misinformation and fighting conspiracy
Mm,
theories. You know what I mean? I feel like
yeah.
they're gonna come out and say like, okay, we kind of did the biggest one of all time on you guys, but everything else don't. I feel
Yeah.
like
Well,
it just opens them up for so much.
I think what they might do is kind of the tactic of like, oh, we've also been lied to by people that used to be in government, and like, we're just finding out this now with you, and that's why they're only seeming, that's why they're going back to
Yeah.
2004, and they're like, oh, we don't know about this stuff, and in that congressional hearing, they're like, oh, what about, oh, did you say Robert Salas at Malmstrom? Like, what's that? Oh, I've heard rumors about that, but nothing else, and they're just kind of playing like they don't know a lot of
Yeah.
this, right? Like, whereas they must be aware of. So, again, I don't think everybody's aware of everything in government, because obviously it's very compartmentalized and stuff like that. But surely these people know more than they let on, right?
Yeah, it's funny to watch them like do the little dance, right? Like how you're doing, like, oh, what?
Yeah,
Shocked.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you, so that's the UFOs and nukes connection. I don't know if there's any like other connections that well, there's actually loads, actually, aren't there? There are loads. But one I've been thinking about a little bit more recently is like a connection with water. I was watching a series the other day, Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix. They had an episode
Oh,
on Michigan. I can't remember the year.
oh, is that the new
Maybe.
one? The new episode that came out already? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen it?
No, I haven't seen it yet, but I do know Michigan has like a bunch of stuff I think connected to the water. Was that a big theme in that episode?
It wasn't necessarily a huge theme in just this episode. It was there. I recommend it, by the way. It was a really good episode.
Oh yeah, I
There
need
was
to
just
check it out.
this. There was this one moment, and there was this kind of. It was either one UFO or no. There was a few UFOs on one night, and they were sighted by hundreds. I think hundreds of people. They were caught on radar. They were seen by a couple of pilots, and all these kind of things. So they were very well recorded. And there was this couple on the edge of Lake Michigan camping or whatever, and they apparently saw like a UFO hovering, like I think it was maybe 6,000 feet or 6,000 meters or something in the air, and basically a tower of water, like a waterfall going up to this
Oh,
craft.
whoa.
The lady, the researcher that was that looked into this case, she said like, oh, and this was one of the weirdest things I ever heard. And so I kind of, my ears pricked up, and I'm listening, and then she talks about that massive like tower of water, and I was like, whoa. And we always hear things about them kind of going into and out of the water, like they're underwater unidentified objects as well. And
Did they
like
have a video of that, or did they do like a recreation?
they did a recreation, and
Oh,
it kind of,
cool.
yeah, that's probably why it stuck in my brain so much as well, because the recreation was like,
Did
whoa.
it look like
And
the sunspot things or whatever, where it's like the UFO stealing energy from the sun?
yeah,
I would
something
imagine
like that. It
like
looked
that.
wild. Yeah, it was really cool. They did a cool job with the recreation thing. But yeah, it just got my mind racing about like, is there more to that kind of connection with water? Like that they're always seen over bodies of water. There's loads of sightings, aren't there, over lakes and things like that, as well
Yeah.
as over the sea. So I don't know if you've ever given it any thought.
Yeah, kind of, yeah, because like, yeah, there's what Catalina.
Mm,
There's always a bunch of stuff they say, and
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised because it's somewhere where like we don't go. Maybe it's like
yeah,
it'd be easy to have like underwater base, and then even too, kind of building off that too. It's like Antarctica. Like what if they could
hmm,
just go through snow like super easily?
yeah,
So it would
yeah,
make sense. And yeah, like you said, there's a bunch of water connections. I think a lot of, because Michigan has a bunch of activity that I think is mostly centered around like their Great Lakes and whatnot. So
yeah.
it's, I think, and yeah, like everything's basically like except for like Roswell or New Mexico stuff, it's all water related to some degree, it
Yeah.
seems.
Yeah, we're with the blue planet, right? So maybe that's something to do with why they're here. Obviously, it's different to nukes in the sense that that's a major national security issue and things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I thought it was still quite fascinating. This kind of potentially maybe slightly untapped connection. Maybe we haven't really kind of dug into that enough.
What do you think?
Um,
Maybe they're so let's just hypothesize with the one from the episode. What
yeah,
do you think they're using it for? Like energy, or like what to drink, or
yeah. I don't know. I mean, energy. I don't know if it's to drink or maybe it's to maybe they've got like a. I mean, major speculation mode, right? But they could
yeah.
be taking like huge amounts of water to maybe transporting it somewhere else, to grow stuff or to feed their farm of humans that they have on their mothership or on their other planet
Oh,
or
yeah.
something. I don't know. I mean, there's so many ways you could go with it. Maybe they're just trying to clean their craft. Maybe they're just trying to get it looking good.
Yeah.
I
Uh,
have.
and then you have the stuff too where it's like the inside super big compared to the outside. So maybe they
Mm,
have like a whole giant ocean in there. Like
yeah, that's
who
like something from
knows?
Doctor Who, right? The
Yeah, or
his
like Harry
TARDIS.
Potter, like some of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like the amount of water you'd be able they'd be like taking up. I just like I don't know how that would even work, or like that must if that was really like that, then imagine when they stopped sucking all this water up, it must have just all dropped down and created like a huge wave or something. So whether it just looked like water, maybe it was something else, or I just
Yeah.
it just
It's
blew my mind that like seeing that recreation and hearing that story when it was also with so much other data, like I said, with radar and sightings by various people, police,
was that
pilots.
one from the 90s? Do you remember?
Yes, I believe it is. It's either the 90s or the 80s, but I'm pretty sure it was the 90s. Yeah, I think it was either 96 or 94. I think 96. I'm going to go with 96. I think
Cool.
it was
Heck
Michigan
yeah.
1996. But check out the episode on Unsolved
I
Mysteries.
will.
I highly recommend it. It was nice, really, really well made. I got another question from Joe. So I'm
Oh,
going to
heck
read
yeah,
it kind
Joe.
of pretty much word for word. Yeah. I'm curious how you decided to approach the Tom DeLonge material. These are some of your most popular videos, and DeLonge is a very controversial and impactful character. You treat him quite fairly and give him one of the best portrayals of his hard-to-accept views. I'm curious how you manage to balance an objective approach while dealing with the eccentricities of DeLonge's actions and views.
That one was kind of easy in the sense where I literally just listened to his interviews and just plotted out like this is either a data point for his timeline that he said, or this is
Mm-hmm.
a data point for like his overall view, which was like the
Yeah.
part two, and then just kind of putting them in chronological order. Although I do want to redo those. I do want to redo like basically all of my ones before my recent two, but just because there's some stuff I left out in there, like like I didn't mention and it wasn't on purpose or anything. I've just like learned since then, but he makes a big deal of his Freemasonry. I don't really know how it ties all into it, but I feel like
Yeah.
I should like at least have presented it there and been like, this is what he says. I don't know what to make. Like, do you have any opinions on that, by the way?
I don't know enough about it, I don't
Yeah,
think. I
right.
mean,
It's like,
I know that it's like an interesting thing, but and it's like this kind of weird club, very secretive and all that. But
yeah,
I don't know enough about it. But maybe you should do a Tom DeLonge part 3 and like add in like
yeah,
the afterthoughts, the extra bits.
yeah. And there's some more stuff about like the timeline, early on, like with his Greer connections and him getting kind of
Mm,
into it that I think I've learned more about that I think would make kind of the whole his whole story a little more interesting and like understand how he got from point A to point B.
yeah.
But yeah, I guess to answer his question, it was just I really just tried to and I coached it too a lot. And the thing I'm like, I don't know if he's being used as a disinfo guy. I'm not telling you to believe
Mm,
him. This is
yeah.
just, this question literally gets asked on Reddit at the time, like every day. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? By like 10 different people. So here you go. And yeah, that's crazy. That's like my most viewed video and stuff like that. And it's just crazy too. Like the editing, I feel like the audio is pretty bad on that, but people still enjoy it, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they were
Mm,
good. I thought they were good. I don't, when
thanks.
it's your own stuff, you're perfectionist, right? And you pick up on all
Yeah,
these little things, and yeah,
every
you kind
little mouth noise and whatnot.
of, yeah, yeah. So what are your thoughts on DeLong? Like, do you think everything he says is well? Obviously, I don't think there's everything he says. I don't think we can pull it all in a bucket like that. But what's your kind of take on him? I guess.
Uh, I think because like okay, so for example, a lot of people like to hate him, but
Hmm.
I spent so much time in the past and in the history and like reading about people who like lived and died wanting to get congressional hearings and wanting to
Yeah,
get rid of the stigma. So like what
yeah,
he did, I feel like is amazing, to be honest. Call me a shill, call me whatever. His the spaceship thing was ambitious, you know what I mean? But who knows, maybe who knows, maybe they could build something like that. Some people say tic-tac is ours. But
yeah,
I think and I think one thing people forget a lot too is that like he's super rich, especially at
yeah,
the time with Blink 182, which kind of just opens doors and gives people influence that like what I mean, like I feel like we don't understand even, you know what I mean? So it's he was able to do something. He was able to help get the release of those videos. What I do wonder is if he like how much of it was him planned or how much of it was like already planned for him kind of thing, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
that's one where it's like, okay, I could see because That's what I would want to add too, is like go more into the website he had made and stuff like that in the early 2000s. He was already kind of like a name, not the biggest name, but a known name in the UFO community at that time. Because yeah, like he made a big a website like in 2002 or something like that, where people could like
Mm,
post about UFO stuff
okay.
and whatnot. So yeah, I think what he's done is great. I'm I'm curious to see what he does next, because like you never know, right? What
Yeah.
people are calling his show Drug Bears or whatever. It's like when that came out, I thought, oh, that's pretty funny. But and now he's like back in Blink 182. So I think he's done basically as much as he could do at the time he came in, and I feel like he's exiting gracefully. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like you say, kind of good or bad, like him or loathe him, he's done a lot for this topic, like to push it forward, get it into the mainstream, get it talked about. And actually, even though a lot of people don't think he's very credible, like he's made this topic way more credible because of the people that he's encouraged to go public, I guess. But he's so fascinating, yeah, by like he's this rock star guy, pop star rock star that's somehow does have the contacts that he says he has. Like, you know, if people didn't
Yeah.
realize, if we didn't have the evidence that he is connected with these people, and you know, it'd be so easy to dismiss him as like, yeah, no way, this guy like talks to all these people and has had these
Yeah.
meetings and has been, you know, but he actually has. And so then you have to question like how much of what he says is real. And I definitely believe that there's a certain percentage of the stuff he says is going to be accurate. But then there's going to be a certain percentage that's going to be not accurate, and then there's the stuff that's in the middle as well that maybe kind of is a bit muddy. And then I also question like what's, you know, kind of his relationship to government, because obviously they have had some, you know, contracts and stuff with TTSA, but then at the
Yeah.
same time, like he's always trying to push the, I don't know, I say always, but I don't know if he still does so much, but he definitely has tried in the past to push the narrative of like, you're going to kind of thank the government for not telling you this stuff at some stage. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I see why they didn't tell us, and we're going to forgive them, and all will be healed. And I just don't know how much of that I buy. I hope
Yeah.
he's wrong with that as well, obviously, because I hope that whatever the big secret is not horrifically terrifying. I hope like at
Yeah.
worst, like I can deal with somber maybe, but like the way Tom kind of sometimes it makes me feel like there's something worse than somber, like something terrifying.
Yeah, it's really some of the stuff they say is very unsettling, right? And to
Yeah.
the I do get that sentiment too. And like a lot of people have like say that, and I even say that too to a degree where it's like, okay, he's like totally like glorifying the military's role, or not glorifying,
Mm.
but like glossing over, you know?
Yeah, giving them
And
an
I just
out.
think, yeah, I think that was probably the only way he was gonna ever be able to like get this to happen, you know what I mean? So I do give him some leeway on that, but who knows? Maybe it is like once you find out, we will be feeling that way. A fun thing I like to ask people is, what would it have to be the truth for you to support the cover up, to the point where like you would murder people to support it?
Yeah, I mean,
Like not you murder people, but you know what
yeah.
I
I
mean.
don't know if there'd be anything like, you know, to go that deep. Like if we weren't talking about that they've killed people and stuff to keep it quiet, if it was just a case of lying to people and like, you know, paying them off to be quiet, then that might be different, and maybe like it would have to be something pretty bad still. I mean, the way I look at it is I think I would want to tell people whatever it is, but I kind of reserve the right to say, yeah, in fact, that was not true. Like you know, do you know what I'm getting
Mhm.
at? Like I like to think I would tell people the truth if they put it in front of me and said, this is the big thing. Do you want to tell people or not? I like to think I would say, yes, we have to. We just maybe have to do it carefully, which might be what they're doing right now, by the way. But at the same time, yeah, I recognize the possibility that maybe it's something that would destroy society. Maybe it's just a case of they're keeping it quiet to keep people, you know, keep the rich rich and keep societies in order and keep us all in our place and keep the status quo. But then there is obviously the other side where it could be
Yeah.
something so horrifically bad that maybe they are kind of protecting us, but I don't know if I buy it. I mean, there's not really the evidence there for me. There's not really the track record with governments and military organizations and just people in power.
Yeah.
There isn't the track record of them genuinely trying to protect us. So I don't think, why would they be genuinely trying to protect us with this? More likely they're trying to protect themselves, I think.
Yeah, hopefully. Because yeah, a lot of them do say some pretty somber, right? Or when Lou recommended Trains of the Sea.
Have you read that? I didn't read it, but it was stuck in my mind that he recommended it.
Yeah, I read it. It's actually not that long. I think it's only like 12 or 15 pages. It's a short story. So if you ever have some free time or something, I'd recommend it. But yeah, and he walked it back, but it is kind of a somber like story. It's like, well, bro, like
Yeah.
and then I think Chris Mellon has a good quote I like too, where it's like, we don't even really know like what it is because when people are like, we can handle the truth, like da da da, it's like we don't even really know like what the truth is. Like because I do think there is a limit for everyone where it's like I would support the cover up at this point, or I would, what if it's something horrible? Like the more people know about it, the more like it is able to interfere with our like reality and like manipulate it. You know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of fun, not fun, but they are fun in a
Yeah.
way. Little
Interesting,
puzzles.
different kind of ways. Yeah, like I guess you're right. If you think about it like that, like what about if they if they did contact the government, right? Because they studied us for years and then they were like, okay, these are the people in charge, and they go to them and they say, right, here's the situation. But if you tell the masses about us, then we're going to wipe out your planet. We're going to exterminate
Yes,
you.
exactly.
I guess there are potential
Right?
things like that. Yeah, like if that was the truth, then yeah, I would definitely be getting down on my knees and like, I'm sorry, like
Yeah.
you were right.
It was all a
Yeah.
lie.
Yeah, it's like you say, so many unknowns, and I'm gonna ask you later, but I always question like how much anybody knows. Like even the person that knows the most, we have no idea really. Like I don't think personally that even the person that knows the most knows intentions.
Yeah.
But it's just
I would say person who
speculation.
knows the most probably doesn't even know like 60% maybe, and maybe like us like UFO nerds going off publicly available information, we're probably at like 12%
Mm,
maybe.
yeah.
But yeah, I feel like there's just so much that we don't know about what these things do, and they act so weird, and
Mm.
sometimes they're just kind of doing whatever, sometimes it seems like they're interfering with us, to a degree.
And there's
So
so much to it as well, aren't there? There's so many like little branches off
yeah.
and so many little tangents that seem connected that most of them may be, and maybe there's some that aren't, and maybe there's some things that are just there's a lot that I'd love to know.
Yeah,
Hopefully one day.
there's a quote by Amy Michel, right? That's a famous French, I believe, old school ufologist who he's on my video list. But I just
Mm.
heard someone say this quote. He was like, you get into UFOs and you start researching like astronomy and angles, and then before you know it, you're into like Mediterranean mysticism, old like Islamic witches, doctors, like you know what I mean? Like, yeah,
Yeah.
so there's so many different little sub angles to this thing where it's like, and even did you see like Lou Elizondo in the Jesse Michaels video where he was talking about like the occult stuff with NASA? It's like there's so many different weird
Yeah.
angles to this
Like
stuff.
the past lives thing or something like that. It was that
Something like
moment
that.
he's
And
in
he
the
said like
forest.
that a lot of the NASA rocket launches were on like the 33rd degree, something like that.
Mm.
So I think
Okay,
they're gonna
yeah.
get into it more on his next interview, which might be out by the time this comes out. But there's so many weird layers and sub layers to this whole subject where it's like, what are we supposed to
Yeah.
make of this?
Yeah, that is it's weird, and a lot of like it makes me think what you just said. It makes me think about some of those like military badges, or I can't remember which logos or badges it is, but
Oh
with like
yeah.
old Egyptian like sphinxes and things like that, and like little hints to either ancient things on Earth or to UFOs, obviously as well. We've all seen those kind of
Hmm.
logos and badges and doing the rounds. But yeah, there's a lot we don't know. Um, Having reviewed so much of ufology, do you believe there are any major aspects of the phenomenon that, or the cover up, that people kind of misunderstand today? Most people, like the popular culture, misunderstands.
I think kind of like my two recent videos, I felt like very like passionate and energized while making them because I do think, and kind of like what we were talking about earlier, it's like one, there's the phenomena angle and studying the cases, and two, there's studying the ways that like this subject has been like manipulated in the public
Yeah,
eye.
yeah,
And I feel like that's like, I feel like before you even get to the phenomena, you kind of got to internalize that as like a society and like as a person to person basis.
yeah.
So that's why I was pretty hyped on my two recent ones, just kind of showing that. And in many ways, and John Greenwald says something similar where it's like it's easier to prove that like than it is the
Yeah.
phenomena. You know what I mean? There's all this
Yeah.
documentation of all the ways that media was influenced to shape public opinion. And
Mm.
yeah, I think that's just an important angle. And for like the scientists, and because I'm sure you feel the same way too, like with some of these scientists when they come on and like they're just so arrogant and cocky. And it's like, you guys don't even understand the history of this subject of like why now you're only doing this because you're like being allowed to per se in a chance. There's scientists who have tried to get into this who've had their like careers ruined, you know. So I
Yeah.
guess just kind of understanding that, and it's kind of just ties into my whole channel, right? Where it's like the history of it and how we were talking earlier too. They're trying to gaslight us and like learn with us from post 2004, but there's this whole history that needs to be understood to make sense of like what's coming out today. So I guess
Yeah.
that's the
Needs to
angle, I
be
guess.
better understood. Yeah. Yeah, for
Hmm.
sure. Yeah, it is really crazy when you really dig into all that, like how it was genuinely planned to create a stigma, and how they were completely denying things and laughing about things, whereas literally having conversations behind closed doors about how this was real and how like they need to look into this. And it's kind of terrifying, really, like the control that they have over media in that sense. That
And it's just
again,
out
whether
there
it's
too.
and whether it's control or whether it's just like, I read something in Leslie Kane's book recently on UFOs, like these two social political scientists like talking about the taboo and the stigma and everything like that, and how that's kind of become so ingrained. And it was a really good write-up, and they basically saying that it's not like come from a decision, it's just like grown, you know, like a tree, like whereas it started off as like, we're gonna not say anything about this, and then it's just grown from that. And obviously we knew there are bits where they've said like
Yeah.
stigmatize it and dismiss it and debunk it, and but at the same time, like it's like a natural snowball effect as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's wild.
Yeah, like they did
Um,
JANAP 146 in like the 50s, and that just started the culture of pilots not reporting it. And then over the years,
mm,
I don't even think JANAP 146 is in play anymore, but it's just like after decades of that culture just building on top of itself, snowballing, and yeah, you get
yeah,
to a place where we're at today.
yeah. But it's starting to go the other way now, I think, and
Yeah,
hopefully
it's
that's going to pick
crazy.
up speed and snowball too. It is crazy, really. Yeah, which how
And
much
we were
has
talking about
changed
like
in
the
the last
Obama
5 years.
TikTok that came out this week, and
Yeah,
Eric Weinstein on Twitter, some of the stuff he's saying, it's
yeah,
he has a great outlook on it, by the way. I just want to say just like in terms of just like humility to the
mm,
subject, because yeah, it
yeah,
just really grinds my gears when I see people who like are barely getting into the subject acting like they're better than like all the people who are already in the subject, you know what I mean?
hmm,
And like they're giving it a fresh look, you know, now that
yeah.
they're looking at it, it's a legitimate subject, you know. So I think he has a good amount of like humility and like trying to understand, and we're all just trying to understand, like no one really knows what's going on. But
Yeah, his main line. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's basically saying that like, I used to think it was BS, and I now realize I'm wrong. There's something going on, and we don't know what it is. And he said, I think if there's not something going on, then that in itself is like something we need to talk about, because then what are people seeing, and what's all,
yeah,
what are all
no,
these documents referring to, and
exactly. He says like which I agree with too. It's like we're either living through UFO disclosure, which is insane, or we're living through the biggest like psyop of fake UFO disclosure, which is
that's
also
it.
like insane. Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like both of those, one's a little more insane than the other, but they're both insane to be
yeah,
living through. Like
definitely.
Obama's literally making TikToks about like UFOs.
Yeah, it's like the thing about like, if this is somehow, I mean, I don't think there's much chance that everything UFO has been human tech. I don't think there's obviously that kind of 0.1% or whatever, that 100 years ago we had some kind of secret, tiny little society, maybe a tiny pocket of ancient Egyptians survived in secret and continued to growing their technological capabilities all this time. And so maybe it is some kind of human tech somehow, but let's just say I think that's incredibly unlikely. But even if it was, that would be in itself like a profound and paradigm
Yeah,
shifting.
exactly. I totally agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
the
So
tic-tac, if that was human tech, it's like, yeah, that's insane. Like,
yeah, like, so whatever this thing is, it's insane. So that's the whole point, unless it's just finding out what it is. Let's go talk about the Tic Tac a minute. So during the Nimitz incident, from the UFO seemed to display, or the Tic Tac seemed to display kind of precognition or telepathy or something along those lines by going to the cap point. That before the pilots went there, based, again, nobody was supposed to know of that. This was something that I spoke to Rich Hoffman about recently. He mentioned it, and it got me thinking. And what are your thoughts on
what
that?
was what was his take on it? Because yeah, that's one of the things where it's like the tic-tac is like the nuts and bolts. Like everyone's like, I'm a nuts and bolts guy. Like I love the tic-tac.
Yeah,
But then there's that angle of it, right? Where it's like, this kind
yeah,
of seems like actually more high strangeless, anomalous. So I'm curious
yeah.
what Rich had to say.
Exactly. And that's what I said to him. I said that this is like an element of that hugely talked about case with all this data that we just haven't really talked about en masse,
Yeah.
and it's, and so, yeah, he brought it up. We didn't go in deep on it, but yeah, he believed that whatever it was displayed some kind of, yeah, whether it be telepathy, whether it be precognition, some kind of extrasensory ability by going there. And I think as well, there's lots of cases of that throughout history where they seemingly are able to anticipate what maybe a pilot's going to do, what kind of evasive maneuver they need to take beforehand, and
Yeah.
different things like that. But what are your thoughts on it all?
Yeah. See, I don't, sometimes I'm like, are these things time traveling, or is it just like they're just so calculated they know what we're going to do ahead of time, or they're able to like access like consciousness on a different level, you know what I mean?
Mm,
All
yeah,
speculative, right? But
yeah,
yeah, I don't know, but there does seem to be some kind of like consciousness angle to this whole thing, some kind of like, yeah, precognition, and that kind of ties into even the remote viewing stuff a little
yeah.
bit. It kind of seems like, or astral projection, and I don't
Hmm.
know, but I'm curious to see like as this becomes more and more accepted, like if there's going to be like a new like public SRI remote viewing thing, with like I do think a lot of those things, after being into the subject, I do think some of those things are legitimate, and I do think a good evidence of that is just how much money governments have spent on it over the years. You know what I mean? I feel like if it was really just totally dumb, they would have spent maybe 2 to 5 years max on it. Um, so yeah, and then we have people like Lou Elizondo and Tom DeLonge saying like, yeah, consciousness is a big aspect.
Yeah,
Jacques Vallée says it. Basically, like everyone who's into this subject for a long time ends up there, right? Even the most nuts and bolts people. I
yeah.
remember when Robert Hastings' book came out. Do you remember? Because for a while he was like the nuts and bolts guy, like I only like documents, and then he came out with his
Hmm.
book saying that like him and Bob Jacobs had been experiencers for like a while, but they just didn't want to talk about it. Which I believe him. Some people from the outside would say like, oh, of course he's just trying to sell a book before he dies or
Yeah.
something. But
I
I
don't think
think,
that's the kind of thing you want to make up, really. It's,
yeah,
especially in
yeah.
his situation.
And his
Um,
books were selling good too. UFOs and Nukes is like, I'm sure, doing well.
yeah,
So yeah, that I remember when that happened, I was like, damn it. I was really hope, because Robert Hastings was one of the first videos I made, because when I got into it, the whole UFO nuke angle is like so interesting, right? And it's like nuts and bolts. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Everyone wants it to be as nuts and bolts for as long as they can. And
yeah,
then I remember when he
yeah,
came out with that book, I was like, damn it, dude, like you're supposed to be the guy that like kept us all grounded. And now you're saying you get like stigmata at 3 a.m. Not, I don't
yeah,
think he said he got stigmata. That was just me being joking, but I think he did say like a lot of his encounters were like at 3 a.m. and stuff like that, like kind of spooky stuff. He took it
yeah.
in a good light, if I recall correctly. So just for the
I,
record.
yeah, I think there's going to be more and more of that, like people as well that you wouldn't necessarily think had these experiences, that it's going to come out that
That's gonna be
they were
crazy,
having
huh?
these
Whoa, I
experiences.
haven't thought about that. That would be, and I'm even like non-UFO people imagine
Yeah,
like Obama or someone being like, yeah, I also see, yeah, that would be
yeah,
crazy.
exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I think it is inevitably going to happen. I mean, like, you look at even something like sexuality, like people, even we're only now getting to a point where people feel like they're able to be open and honest about their sexuality, because
Yeah,
before there was fear, and there still is that fear, but less so. But before there was way more fear of being persecuted for it, for your own kind of choices and things like that, your own, however your preferences, however you are. And people were afraid of that, and it's going to be a similar thing with this. Like, that's going to be way longer though, until I suppose that kind of stigma wears
yeah.
off and people feel confident enough to say like, this is something I've been dealing with.
And I like what Grant says about kind of a similar line. Grant Cameron, he says like, 20 years ago or even 10 years ago, there's like a lot of the population that was like, like in their soul, like against gay marriage being legal,
Mm,
like a legal thing, and
yeah,
then kind of overnight, it just kind of like was a thing. And now like you'd be hard pressed to find like those people who 10 years ago, and not saying like you should go hunt them down or anything like that, but just the way that like society changes. And he says like he suspects that the UFO topic is going to kind of go along similar paths of where it's like it was so taboo, and you had all these people adamant to where like one day overnight with no thank you to like all the people in the past who like fought
Yeah.
for it. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yeah.
Everyone's gonna be a UFO person or support like UFOs, like they support gay marriage, you know. So
Yeah.
that is kind of, and I think too, I tried to tie it in with my recent videos where it's like how they were able to build this stigma in society is how they're also able to, it was along similar lines of Cold War propaganda of like anti-communist, anti-socialist. And I'm not like advocating for either of those, but I do think that you're able to talk about those subjects like in Western society a lot more. You know what I mean? The farther
Hmm.
we get away from the Cold War. So there
Yeah.
are these things that take like few years to kind of get rid of before they occupy a new space where they're discussed and debated.
Yeah.
So hopefully UFOs is like on the next track of that.
Yeah, definitely. And science like struggles to accept new things, and for science, once science accepts it or begins to at least accept it enough to research it properly, then like it's going to happen. The media, science, and then the people are going to catch on. It's, or maybe the other way around. But yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
be it's a slow process, but I think we're maybe quite near the end of that process potentially. Like maybe it's been happening for way longer than we realized.
Yeah. I worry
Yeah.
about the scientists a lot, to be honest. I feel like, and maybe it's just because the ones who like go into UFO Twitter can be kind of arrogant, but I don't know. I feel like there's gonna be like a soul searching for them, because I feel like there is this kind of like trust the science mentality, you know what I mean? People like to like
Mm.
flex like science is like the above all truth, and like you guys kind of got duped too, like you know what I mean, into not studying this thing for 50 years and
Yeah.
stigmatizing those that did. So it's like there needs to be some kind of like, not like totally like let's redo all of science, but just I feel like there needs to be an acknowledgement or something like that. Like
Mm.
I don't know, like Avi Loeb should name something after James McDonald or some, you know what I mean? Something, some kind of like acknowledgement of just this role. But I don't know. What do you
Yeah.
think? Do you see what I mean with that?
I
Like,
see what you're getting at. Yeah, I mean, I read a few times, like recently, about the quote of like science advances with funerals, or science progresses with
oh,
funerals,
oh,
and it's
that's
like
hard. That goes good.
it.
That's
Yeah,
dense.
it is, but it's kind of, it's true, and it's like it sucks, but it's true as well, right?
Yeah,
Like, because you got the old guard, and hopefully with this phenomenon, hopefully it's not going to require that. Hopefully we're not going to have to wait for loads of people to die to have
yeah,
this taken more seriously in science. I don't think we're going to need it, but yeah, that's the kind of the other side of it, is like, do we just need to wait for all the people that are young and more open-minded now to advance with inside a society where this is less stigmatized and where this is able to be talked about, in the hallways rather than in secret. That was something Rich Hoffman said as well, like in his military career, like he's been involved with stuff there for ages. And he said it used to be people would come up to him and take him into a side room and they'd talk quietly about, a UFO sighting. But now it's kind of in the corridors. He hears people talking about that kind of thing. And yeah, I think that's a good, like, it's a good way of, it's kind of what's happening
yeah.
in society at large. Let's change a little bit here. I want to ask you about
Oh,
another one of your videos that's not directly related to UFOs.
oh,
Nina Kulagina, or
oh,
Nina
yes.
Kulagina. I kind of always pronounce it wrong. But the alleged psychic, the psychic claimant. What are your thoughts on, I guess, her, but also in general, like alleged psychic phenomena? Like, is it a real thing? You kind of mentioned it briefly a second ago, but yeah, I'd just
Yeah,
love to hear your take.
yeah, and then it kind of goes into like the other quote too, right? It's like you get into UFOs, I'm gonna be nuts and bolts, and before you know it, like
Yeah.
I low key like, some people might not like this. I low key believe Yuri Geller to a degree. I think he's kind of flamboyant and goes over the top, but yeah, like in that video, for people who may not know, there's a Russian alleged
Which,
psychic named.
just to interrupt you for a second, I'll
Mhm.
link all of these videos
Oh,
that we're
perfect,
mentioning from your
cool,
channel in the
yeah.
description, and so anybody that wants to watch it, like, just scroll down, it's there.
Sweet. So yeah, and Ninel Kulagina is I think how she would have said it, but
With an
she was an
accent.
alleged Russian psychic, and they studied her for like over 20 years at multiple Soviet institutions, and multiple high-level scientists got went on the record like defending her, and she went to court, and basically it's either like one of the best documented cases of a psychic, or it's really elaborate game of misinformation,
Mm.
which I'm open to either, which I say like in the video too, I'm open to either, but I kind of do lean towards it being real. And that being said, I do think it does seem to be, I think, kind of legitimate to a degree, just because like what we were talking about earlier too. It's like they funded the Stargate program for over 20 years, and then there's even in your country, like the UK, there's articles you could find where they were like hiring remote viewers after 9/11
Hmm.
to look for Osama bin Laden. Like I didn't even realize that until recent research.
I didn't even
So
know that. That you just told me
yeah,
something I didn't know. That's crazy.
yeah, we'll find the links to make sure that people can read the links and stuff. But yeah, and then you have like Lou Elizondo claiming to be a remote viewer, and then I do know there was some pretty interesting studies in China for like telepathy and like moving stuff around. So I do think that there's something to it.
Mm.
They spent so much money on it over all the years. And I wouldn't be surprised because I do know like a lot of people will point to James Randi as
Yeah.
being like, oh, he debunked all these people and whatnot. And I do think there is like if you look into him, there's some kind of like he was getting funding from some people where it's like it's almost like he was like a Philip Glass or like a Carl
I,
Sagan, like this big
I,
public voice to discredit this, you know?
yeah. I think he also had his walls and defenses so high, and like he was one of those people. They say like you can never kind of convince a hardcore believer otherwise, and you can never convince a hardcore skeptic to believe, no matter what evidence you
Yeah.
show people. I think he was one of those. I spoke to Stanley Krippner, who kind of knew him. I think he had like a kind of a
Oh, wow.
relationship with him, and he kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I
Well,
can't remember if it was with me or somebody else, but Stanley basically said that nobody was ever gonna win this thing because James would always like.
yeah.
First of all, I think you'd have to travel to him. You'd have to pay out of your own pocket to go there, and you'd have to do everything under his conditions rather than conditions that maybe these things work under. Were you gonna say something? Sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you. Yeah, like that sounds on brand. Because
Yeah.
yeah, he had it was kind of like Philip Glass, right? Where Philip Glass had this thing like, I'll give whoever so much amount of money if they're able to prove. And yeah, it's but who knows? Maybe not. I like I said, I think Uri Geller has been flamboyant at times, or
I
like
think.
yeah.
Sorry, I
No, go.
sorry.
No,
It's just
no.
it popped into my head. Something
Yeah,
else
yeah, go,
Stanley
go.
said. Because he was friends with Ingo Swann as well, and he said that Ingo Swann. I hope I'm getting this right, but Ingo Swann wanted to go to do this thing with James Randi, but he just didn't want to pay for himself. And he was like, if James Randi pays for me to go there, like I'll go there and I'll do. Because this guy didn't feel like he needed to prove anything. It wasn't for the money and that kind of thing. But yeah, so I think
What
it's one
interview
of
was
those.
that? I'm gonna probably watch that after while I'm doing some work. That sounds like a good.
Stanley Krippner. Stanley
Cool.
Krippner.
And who is he? He just
He
knew a lot of the guys, or
he old school like sci researcher. So he did load.
oh,
He's
cool.
like a professor. He's got loads of qualifications, and he's like in his late 80s now. But he like
I'll have
did
to check
loads of the
that out.
dream telepathy research early on. In Maimonides, Dream Center, or I can't remember the actual the name of it. But he did loads of research, and so he kind of seemingly knows everybody in these areas. Like
Yeah, that's
he
cool.
was with Ingo Swann when Ingo Swann was like trying to remote view Mars.
Oh
He was like
wow.
sitting in a room with him. So yeah, it's cool.
Have you ever noticed or that like that first generation of remote viewers are all Scientologists? Have you
I
ever picked
hadn't.
up on
No,
that?
I hadn't. No, I
Yeah,
hadn't.
that's something I always found really interesting. I'm like,
Yeah,
I feel like there's some kind of angle there. I don't know. Because then you also
that's
have the whole
weird.
like L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons, Aleister Crowley
Mm,
thing that some people bring up. But yeah, I think Ingo Swann was, I think Pat Price was, Hal was at that time.
that's strange.
It's
Yeah,
really weird, right? Yeah. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe
yeah,
if next time you have someone on in that like that's really in the like with the psi history, that I feel like a good interesting question to ask because I'm trying to
yeah.
figure out
Sure.
what's up with that too.
Well, I'll come
Um
to you next time I'm getting somebody on and ask you for some questions for them.
yeah,
I'm
for
I'm
sure.
gonna
I'll
talk
send
to
some.
Dean Radin soon.
That'd be a
Um,
perfect person to ask about
yeah,
that. Like
he's
what's
like
up with
the
that?
godfather of this. Have you read his book, by the way, or one of his books called Conscious Universe, The Conscious Universe?
No, I haven't. I need to. I know he has a good book too, right? That's just like all about like evidence or whatever. Is it
This
that
is
one?
that. This is
Oh,
this
then
is
yeah.
just basically jam packed full of stats and studies and meta analysis is what it is. It's a book of meta analysis. So he goes back through the decades and just looks like compiles all the studies that were
Oh,
done,
that's cool.
takes out the outliers, and kind of throws away the results like that maybe seem like they don't fit in with the bulk of the evidence, and he goes into all like the file drawer stuff, like how many studies of different results would you need to nullify these.
Oh yeah, that sounds
And
perfect.
it's fascinating. Like it
Sounds
blew
like
my
a must
mind.
read for the must have for the sci angle of
Definitely,
everything.
definitely. I seem to mention it like every time I'm talking about this stuff, but it's definitely a must read. Yeah, 100%. And again, I'll put that link in the description. I think I put that in most of my episode descriptions, that book, just because I think it's so important. And you made me think of something else about the sci stuff as well. When you were talking about the UK using remote viewers to try and find Barack Obama. Hopefully I'm going to get this right, but I can't remember which president it was. That sucks. I should remember that. But one of the former presidents of the United States, I think there's video of him saying that they hired a remote viewer to find a downed airplane. I think a military aircraft. Like
yeah, I
in
think
the
that was
middle of
Jimmy
Africa
Carter,
or
I
something.
believe.
Yes, yeah, I think
Jimmy
so.
Carter.
Have you heard the clip where he says like
yeah,
that they hired
and
this
actually
remote viewer?
I featured that clip a little bit in my Edgar Mitchell video because
Oh yeah, okay. So I
Edgar
guess
Mitchell
maybe
was
that's where I saw it.
maybe because Edgar Mitchell was kind of really influential in like getting that whole sci and getting the funding kind of situation. But yeah, that
Yeah.
clip is crazy, right? That's one of those clips, right? And I had included because it's like remote viewing sounds so outlandish, and then you hear a clip like that, or it's like President Jimmy Carter, and I'm pretty sure at the time he was referencing George Bush Sr. was the CIA director at the time. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. It might be wrong. Have
Rings
to
a bell.
fact check me, comment people. Um, but yeah, to hear him say that like so matter of factly, and then like we know from our knowledge that like when he's talking about California, he's like talking about SRI, and it's
Mm.
like yeah, he says they found a down plane in Africa, and
Yeah.
that they were trying to find it forever, and then they went to this lady, and then she gave him the coordinates, and it's like it could all be disinfo, but I don't know. I think, and
I
because
mean,
Jimmy Carter has a sighting too, right? So I feel like he's kind of open to it. But
yeah.
yeah.
But like I say, like with Dean's book, like that was where everything changed for me. Before I read that, I really didn't give any weight to any of this stuff. Like I was pretty nuts and bolts with it before that, and like I didn't. If you like remote viewing, I'd read about it
Yeah.
on the internet, and I'd be like, like I don't know, and like I just didn't really buy into any of it. But then that book just blew my mind, just changed just flipped my paradigm.
Get that for sure. I'm gonna just put a little note here because
Yeah,
I've heard about that too. Because
I'll send you the link if you want.
oh, perfect. Yeah, heck yeah. So yeah, you should ask him for sure about the Scientology connection, just because I'm curious. And then
Yeah.
also, I'm curious, and what are your thoughts of like Havana syndrome being like a psi attack? Have you ever heard that? I think Yuri
I've
Geller actually says that these
I've
days.
heard
But
about it. I honestly haven't looked into it enough to really form a strong opinion on it. It was kind of every time I hear about it, I'm like, I'm gonna look into that later because now I have enough floating through my brain, and I haven't got to it yet to go in deep. I don't know, because like people say it's connected to like a psi attack, but then also like UFOs, like and some connection there.
yeah.
So I don't know, but I know
I
that
could see it
people.
going in multiple ways. It is a
Mm,
weird phenomenon. I think that is like I think it's gonna eventually tie in somehow. Maybe psychotronic weapons, maybe psi attack, maybe UFO. Who knows? But
yeah,
it's the way they report it is weird. I don't know if you some of the crazier ones. I'm debating making a video about it, but I'm kind of on the fence. I'm like because they're still doing the attacks or whatever.
yeah.
But some of them are like some lady allegedly got it on the White House lawn. So it's like what weapon could do it there if we're going off the assumption they're telling the truth. But yeah, so many layers to every story, right? Like, are you lying to
Yeah.
me?
Yeah, it's wild. Let's kind of. I was going to do quickfire in a little bit, but let's kind of maybe throw my last few questions before quickfire into quickfire because I don't want to keep you too long today. So let's kind of maybe try and rattle through a bunch of different things, and you can just kind of give me your like in a nutshell thoughts. It's going to be hard because obviously these topics are huge.
Yeah,
and like each one individually, we could probably do like an hour on, like really dissect it. But let's kind of like just sweep through these faster than the light. Not quite that fast. It doesn't have to be that fast, but let's just move fast. So taking into account all of your research, everything, all of your studying, everything you know, everything you've seen, everything you've read, your gut feelings and everything, like what do you think that the UFO UAP phenomenon actually represents? Like what do you think the they is? Who are they? Is there a they? what is
I
it behind the
I would
whole
say
thing?
the best quick rapid response answer would be the cover of that Jacques Vallée book, where it's like a hand with a puppet, with like the puppet has hands that are also puppets. I feel like it's like I feel just so like I don't even know. Like I wouldn't be surprised if it's literally just like a mesh ball that just can make us view whatever we want. You know what I mean? So I kind of I would say I'm willing to go like interdimensional. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interdimensional over like a physical being on another planet because I do
Mm-hmm.
think it is able to like manipulate our perceptions of reality. And who knows, maybe that is a physical technology down the line because we kind of do some similar things where we manipulate animals like emotions.
Yeah.
And I'm sure other countries do it on people. I'm sure we do it on people too. But if I had to like go all in on one, I would say like an interdimensional and multiple things going on, but
Yeah.
interdimensional being that can manipulate space time and maybe can even time travel. And
Mm-hmm.
I do kind of lean towards the trickster element of it. Sometimes it just seems like a troll, like it doesn't even, you know what I mean? Like, or a kid, like, so
Yeah.
that's my rapid fire. But also it's like all speculative, who knows?
Yeah, no, this whole thing is going to be
Yeah,
speculative
cool.
from here on out. Obviously, a lot of it's already been speculative, but yeah, that's a fascinating take. I'm still kind of not really prepared to like understand interdimensional yet. I don't even really kind of can't get my head around it properly. For me, I'm still on like the most rational explanation feels like it would just be interplanetary
Mm,
extraterrestrials. It feels the simplest, but yeah, it doesn't easily explain everything. So if I pushed you on something even more speculative,
mhm.
on in relation to that, like intentions, the most speculative of all speculation, like could you even speculate on their intentions? Are they friendly? Do they come in peace?
I wouldn't. So I think there's multiple things going on, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are maybe agnostic to us in the way that we are to like mice, that we
Mm-hmm.
test on.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that might be a big reason for the cover up is like, let's say hypothetically, like all the missing 411 people is related to this. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. I've thought
So
about that as well.
yeah, Christ.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so hopefully not, but and then Colares is I have 3 videos on and it's one of my favorite cases and there people were getting injured, you know what I mean? And it
Mm.
kind of seemed like it was intentional. Might have just been like a byproduct of an intentional way of gathering information on behalf of whatever was behind these like and those ones it was like orbs and a bunch of different shapes and it's really well documented. But as far as intention, I don't know. I think a lot of them like to watch wars, it seems like, but then again, who knows? And then you have the angle where you have people like James Fox saying they walk among us, so that adds a
Mm.
whole nother like can of worms.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I don't
Cool. No, that's all good.
know.
Assuming there's a non-human intelligence here of some form or another, how long have they been here?
I would imagine at least as long as recorded human history, which is what like 13,000 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh, and maybe yeah, maybe and if they could even time travel, who knows? But yeah, I would say at least recorded human history, at least, and probably even as long as humans have been like present in their current form, which is I think like 150,000 to 200,000 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
A
weird to
long
think
time.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's cool to think about it. Have you ever personally witnessed a UFO or ever seen anything that you would
No,
consider like strange?
no,
Nothing
very
like paranormal
fortunate,
or anything.
fortunately, and I personally don't, and I'm not like anti CE5, but I just think that there's a lot of like research that people should do beforehand, just because you never really know. It's almost like before you take like a psychedelic or something, you want to like research it thoroughly beforehand because you just
Yeah.
never know if you go into it like with a blank slate, some things bad could happen, I think. But I do think a lot of people have good experiences too. So, but I haven't had one and I personally don't want one because it does seem like even in uh when it's like not intentional, some people will get like hurt or radiation burns or
Mm,
you know what I
mm,
mean, develop some kind
yeah.
of cancer or something.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. I haven't seen one either, or not properly, but I kind of want to see one from a distance, but I'd be
Yeah.
kind of
Would you do
scared at the same
CE5?
time.
Would you ever try CE5 or something
I
like
don't
that?
know. I mean, like you, I kind of probably similar to you in that sense. Like, I'm kind of, I'd be a bit freaked out. Like, I'd
Yeah.
need to do quite a bit of research beforehand, and even then, like, I don't know how comfortable I feel like doing that. I don't know who I would be communicating with. Like, if
Exactly.
that's assuming it works. What that was going to be in our quickfire. I was going to ask you if your take on that. Like, is it real? So I'm guessing you think that there is something to it, or at least
Yeah,
could be.
because even like Greer and Elizondo, they seem to like be
Yeah.
like they hate each other, but they both agree like CE5 is a thing. They have
Hmm.
different interpretations of it, and it kind of
Yeah.
does seem uh like the concept of CE5, like it's just kind of like a modern way of branding like different practices of like ancient cultures and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised, but yeah, it is kind of unsettling too, because then you have to think like, so is this thing always just able to hear what I'm saying, and now that I
Yeah.
want it to, it's like responding to
Yeah.
me, you know? So
Yeah. And if there's some kind of hitchhiker effect, like would that
yeah.
follow you home? Yeah. I don't know if it's something I would want to mess around with for now. Like, yeah, I'd be kind of freaked out, like you say. What's your favorite UFO ET movie?
Movie. Ooh, that's a good one. Hmm.
Like earlier, we briefly touched on Arrival. We mentioned Arrival.
I like
I can't
Arrival
remember
for the
if we
intro. The
mentioned anything
intro,
else.
I think of for Arrival is like the best in terms of like that's what I like to imagine it will be like when it officially like when it's
Yeah,
real for everyone. And then
yeah.
aside from that, there was this really good one. Let's throw some wild ones out there. Or actually, is there a TV show question? Because I might answer with a TV show.
You can do either. Yeah, just
There's
kind of take
okay.
it away.
There's a TV show that Steven Spielberg actually did, which I actually want to do a video on, which I think will be fairly interesting because he has a lot of UFO lore. Surprisingly, like his first movie he ever made, I think, was like inspired by a UFO case, and it was like when he was
Yeah.
a teenager. But he has a show that came out called um Taken, and it was like in 2004 with it was on the Sci-Fi Channel, and it's like when Dakota Fanning was really young. But that show is pretty interesting, and I recommend people watch it.
Wow. Yeah.
It it basically goes from like the Roswell time period up until 2004, and it tracks like different families' relation to the phenomena.
Oh,
It's
no
almost kind
way.
of like a Secret Machines, but for
Yeah.
the 2000s. So that's a fun one.
Awesome. Yeah, I haven't come across that. And just, do you got any idea where people might find that to watch that, or?
I think it's on YouTube to be honest, but like with like Greek subtitles or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll see if I can find it and send it to you, and then we
Okay,
could
cool.
have it in the
If
description.
Yeah, if we find it, I'll put it there. But yeah, that sounds awesome. I'd like to watch that as well. Crop circles. Are they all hoaxes? Is there a UFO connection? Is it, what's your take in a nutshell?
I honestly haven't done too much of a deep dive, but if I had to go in on it, I would say I wouldn't be surprised if some of them are. Because isn't there
Mm.
something like about like the way they're bent when it's like a real one or something? But I don't know. I have really haven't done a lot. I do like Think Anomalous a lot, his channel, and I think he thinks that some of them are legit. So
Mm.
maybe, but yeah, I haven't done enough research on it.
Yeah, they're interesting. I haven't either done enough, but I think there are certain things that point to at least some of them maybe being legit. And it seems like it could be some kind of way of communicating for
Yeah.
some species of thing that's very different to us. Yeah, like John Mack was interested in those as well at the end of his life. He went to visit one and lay down in one and said like the energy was
Oh,
like
really?
feeling really intense for him and stuff. Yeah.
They're big in
Uh,
your country, right? Like your home country, right? I feel like.
in the UK, yeah, they are bigger there, I think, but I think most people in the UK just dismiss them as like people messing around.
Mhm.
I'd love to see one, like a legit big one that like people think is not made by humans, but yeah, I don't really know what to think either. I'm kind of with you on that. I need to at some point do more research. This one you probably know quite a bit about, seeing as you've made a video about it. Cattle mutilations. What's
Ooh.
your kind of gut feeling on that? And again, we could talk about it for ages, but
Right.
is it
Rapid fire.
like there's definitely a potential UFO connection? Do you think there is a
If I
UFO
had to like
connection?
bet the house on it, I would bet probably connected. I think it's connected. And
Yeah,
and that might even be more of like the interdimensional being aspect of it. But
yeah.
yeah, I
Why
would say
cattle as
so.
well?
I don't
And
even know
horses
like
too,
cattle.
right?
And
But
yeah, and
but we
horses.
don't hear about dogs, do we? We don't hear about dogs and cats being like having the same things done to
Well,
them. So
the scary thing is like what if they do it to humans? There's some cases out there where it's like
yeah,
people say like this kind of looks exactly like a cattle mutilation, but a human. Maybe it was a cartel. Hopefully it was a
yeah,
cartel. But
yeah.
Have you come
Heard
across
about that
those?
too. I've heard about human mutilation. Yeah, I haven't gone down that rabbit hole because I'm a bit afraid of that. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's just hope that they're not doing that. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
maybe the reason they do cattle mostly is maybe it's something to do with the fact they realize that's like a major source of food for us. Like humans eat that a lot, and they drink the milk from that, and they, who knows? It's all speculation, but. Yeah, it's definitely bizarre that it seems to be cattle a lot, and it doesn't seem like it's human in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
Your video was awesome, by the way, as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting too, right? It's like there's the FBI officially investigated it in like the 70s or 80s, and they didn't really come to a conclusion. And it
Mm.
was a big enough deal where like that congressman, former astronaut, was like bringing it up, and so it has a history here. And what also I think is interesting is the way the National Enquirer covers it, because in some of my videos I touch on it. I'm probably gonna make a standalone National Enquirer one, but I do think the National Enquirer, there's enough circumstantial evidence to say it was part of like just general narrative control for the CIA, but also specifically with like UFO stuff. So there was some times
Mm.
where like they would get some big cattle mutilation cases before the mainstream media would. So I think it's like almost like using the disinfo as like a map of like what's real and what's not, uh,
Yeah,
or in the same way that like when Linda Moulton Howe came up with her cattle mutilation documentary, that's when Richard Doty came into her life. You know what I mean? Like there seems to be this
right.
kind of like you do something
Yeah,
interesting, worthwhile, and then you get piled on by the National Enquirer, by Richard Doty, by Philip Glass.
yeah,
So
yeah,
using that as like a map of like what's real, what's not, but who knows?
yeah. Again, watch Red Panda Koala's video on that. I'll put it in the description. What about the abduction phenomenon?
I would say if I had to bet the house, I would say yes, although I haven't done as much research. And I'm also very iffy on the whole like hypnotic regression thing. So I
Mm.
don't know. Do you have an opinion on that? Hypnotic regression?
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? The hypnotic regression thing,
Yeah.
because obviously it is possible for ideas to be implanted there, but I read Ralph Blumenthal's biography of John Mack. I don't know if you've read that,
Oh no, I
but
need to. It's on my list for sure.
from the kind of, and I know Ralph a little bit now. I've spoken to him a couple of times on this podcast. I don't know him obviously like personally well or anything, but he comes across as a very genuine and trustworthy person. And everything I've read about John Mack, and he had a lot of access to John Mack's, files and everything and personal stuff and people that he knew. He seems legit and genuine and very intelligent. And he didn't strike me as the kind of person that would implant things into people's minds on purpose to get a certain narrative out of them. But yeah, it's hard that, yeah.
And
I
it's
don't
like
know,
with UFOs,
hypnotic
like
regression.
you get this kind of like humility for everything where it's like, I used to dismiss UFOs. Am I just blindly dismissing remote viewing or hypnotic
Mm.
regression? And then you also don't want to fall like too heavy into it where it's like, I believe everything now because yeah,
Yeah.
it's a can of worms.
I think there's probably too many people though that say they've been abducted. I do think there's something to that, and it makes sense as well. Like really, like if it's
Yeah.
some kind of species here that have been watching us and studying us, it makes sense that they would want to take us up and study us. And maybe it's not evil, maybe it's not the opposite, maybe it's not good, maybe like you say, we're just
Yeah.
kind of irrelevant to them.
And
We
there's some
study
too
mice.
where it's like not even hypnotic and regression. And it's like I've never had a sighting, but when I like as I'm making my channel and stuff, I'll tell people like what I do. And sometimes recently, people are like more open to it, right? UFOs are more. But I started in like 2018, and when I was first getting into it, I had a family friend who was like this really, she was an older, like very distinguished lady, like has her own house. She was like a lawyer in the 70s and stuff like that. And I expected her to be like very dismissive of the subject. And then she told me like super seriously, like, no, she had an experience when she was driving with a female friend
Mm.
and they had like a UFO go over their car and it like messed with the radio and messed with the car and they basically had missing time. So it's like
Wow.
there's no point of her story that has hypnotic regression, but it is almost indicative of like the missing time
Yeah.
angle is like abducted or something happened.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's crazy. And I think a lot of them, obviously, even people that go and visit somebody to do hypnotic regression, they have to realize, something has happened. They have to be convinced enough of something to go and see somebody like that in the first place, right? Like either
yeah,
missing time or some kind of physical evidence on their body that doesn't seem familiar or some vague memories, blurry memories. But yeah, it's a fascinating phenomenon, and you should read John Mack's book. It's
Definitely.
John Mack's book. I probably read John Mack's books as well, but Ralph's book I meant, The Believer, about John Mack, his biography.
Yeah, I want to read his Lawrence of Arabia book, huh? Right? Have you? Because he has
John
one.
Mack's book
Yeah,
on
yeah,
T. Lawrence. Yeah.
yeah. Looks
I
interesting.
haven't read it, but it does sound very interesting. Yeah. I talked to Ralph a little bit about that in one of my interviews with him, because of the John Mack connection. For you, which, again, if you got to choose one on the spot, obviously you might come up with something different if you had time to think about this, but which UFO case would you say is most compelling and suggestive of some kind of non-human intelligence?
So yeah, I always fall back on Colares being my favorite one for multiple reasons. It was a
Mm-hmm.
multi-month wave with multiple sightings, I think like over 100, ranging from farmers to fishermen to police officers to police commissioners to mayors even in the region. So a nice spectrum of like different classifications of people that some people might find more credible than others or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you have physical marks. You have the doctor testifying that like multiple people had like radiation burns and like were getting like poked and prodded by these things. You have you have a lot of media coverage, and then the fact that it's in Brazil is also important. You know what I mean? Because people always say like, oh, it's only an American thing.
Yeah.
And then you had the military come out and investigate with Apuração Prato, and basically they were sent to go like calm the public, and then they all eventually had sightings and whatnot. And
Yeah.
then it was covered up where they said it was a lighthouse offshore that was causing all the sightings. And then there was like a 30 to 40-year period where it wasn't touched. And then in 2004, through lobbying efforts of like Brazilian UFO researchers, they were able to officially release some of the documents which had been leaked before here and there. So they got them officially released. So it basically just has like everything where it's like not in America, there's multiple witnesses, there was an official cover up, and then there was like an acknowledgement of a cover up. And then what I
Yeah.
also like to say when I bring this up to anybody in the government who might be watching, it's like Brazil released these files that are it's pretty much like one of the most scary, I would say, UFO cases, and like their economy didn't crash and like
Yeah.
nothing went crazy, like, you know what I mean? Nothing went super crazy. So for that reason, I
Yeah.
do say Colares. It just has like everything, in my opinion.
Awesome. Awesome. And topical, seeing as you chose the Brazilian case, I wanted to ask, have you seen Moment of Contact yet by James Fox? And what are your thoughts on that incident, the Virginia incident? Just again, in a nutshell, in like 60 seconds.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, and I feel so bad because I actually bought a ticket for the LA premiere, but I just got like
Oh
super caught
yeah.
up with work. I was so sad. But luckily,
Oh
I
yeah.
still like bought the ticket and like I didn't request a refund. So I want to support it, and I
Yeah.
haven't seen it yet. On the incident, I was telling someone we need to rename it first and foremost, and then uh, it's interesting in the lobbying efforts that I was talking about earlier in 2004. They released the files for three cases. There was the Colares case, there was the 1980s like Night of Brazil, and there was another one. And the high-ranking military official who was speaking to the Brazilian UFO researchers said that he had searched for the Virginia case but couldn't find anything. Now that doesn't
Oh
mean
yeah.
it wasn't real or not, but I just remember at the time being like, oh, that is interesting. But according to the whole lore, it seems like the US was really involved. And
Yeah.
I think James Fox is like a smart dude who has like good connections. So I don't think he would spend all the time to make a documentary, about a case that he wasn't like fairly confident on. So I would say
Yeah.
something for sure happened there. I would say so, yeah. And I need to watch it. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I did.
Is it
Yeah.
pretty good?
It's good. It's compelling. Yeah,
Are you pretty
it's pretty
convinced that
awesome.
like something happened after watching it?
Oh, definitely something happened. Whether it's exactly what is said to have happened, I mean, I have no reason to think that what's said to have happened didn't happen. If you see what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't bet my life on it, but the people all seem pretty trustworthy. I don't know everything. I haven't gone into it really deep in terms of like looking into everybody that's a witness, like looking into their background and like how
Mm,
credible they are individually, but there's a lot of smoke there, like
yeah.
there's a lot there. So
And Brazil
you,
has like so like a big history with sightings and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah, no, it's fascinating. He was even like standing on the street at one point, like waiting. They're trying to get people to come up to them, like to tell them if they know anything about it. And some people come up and they're mentioning like that the roads were closed, there were big blockades and like military vehicles, and there's a lot of stuff that line up to make it very, very compelling and very strange. And apparently there's like footage of this being. So
Yeah, I've been seeing
obviously,
that on Twitter, like all the It's like still actively going on this week.
Yeah, they're trying to get this. Yeah, they're trying to get it out, right?
Yeah. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, hopefully. I'm not going to say I'm like expecting that to come out, but we can have hope.
Yeah.
What about Roswell? Again, super quick, but
Super
just
quick,
like
I would say,
I guess the question in super quick terms to help you would just be like, did it happen? Did a craft crash at Roswell?
if I had to say bet the house, I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And it, like you said about somebody said that they couldn't find the Virginia records. Roswell's the same, right? Half of those records are just gone. They've been destroyed, but that something definitely happened there. Like they've even admitted that it was, we've gone from balloon to Project Mogul balloon to something.
And the timeline of the dummies doesn't make sense for their most recent like explanation. Yeah. So something's up.
Nothing adds up. Yeah. When will a human first leave our solar system? Just your best guess. Hopefully we'll be alive to check this.
2070. If we make it to 2070, we'll have stargates by then.
Yeah, okay, cool. Is there ET life in our solar system? I'm talking like fish in Europa's oceans or bugs under the surface of Mars, like little stuff.
I would say yeah, for sure. Especially at that level, yeah, I would say for sure, yeah.
Above like cellular level, you think there's like something maybe fishy, buggy, insecty somewhere?
Fishy, buggy, yeah. Maybe even like rodent-y.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, like a rodent lizard. Yeah, I like it. Nice. What about consciousness? Again, huge topic that we could go for like hours and hours and hours on. I guess the question to help simplify this is, do you think from your understanding, is it, or just from your gut feeling, is it a product of the brain or is it something non-local? Or at least part of it, partly non-local?
See, that's one where I don't even know where to bet. I like both the trains of thought where it's like, oh, you're an antenna. Sometimes maybe I think the antenna. If we had a bet, let's just go out antenna where there's a non-local aspect of it.
Yeah.
And that's maybe why you could pick up on when someone's thinking about you or someone, stuff like that.
Yeah, and if C5 is real, then that would kind of play into that as well, and all the psi phenomenon and everything like that. Will the US government ever tell us everything they know about the phenomenon? And if so, like yes or no, and if so, just guess a year again.
Everything, no, but I do think they're going to tell us more than they've been telling us, like a fairly good amount. And let's say 2024. Let's do it on the election
2024. Year. Nice and optimistic. I like it. Okay, cool. Do you have an opinion either from research, if you've done research in this area, or just from kind of gut feeling or whatever it might be, or belief? I don't know. But do you have an opinion on what happens after we die?
Yeah, no, I don't know. I was raised Catholic. I'm agnostic these days. And I don't know. Some days I'm like, oh, maybe we reincarnate. Some days I'm like, maybe it's just like nothingness, like how you imagine what it was like before you were born. Yeah, I have no idea. What about you?
Yeah. I mean, I could talk for literally hours about this. Like, I've done a lot of research into it. It all started with Netflix's series based on Leslie Kean's book, Surviving Death. Then I read Leslie Kean's book, and I read that, and then directly after finishing that book, I was onto Dean Radin's Conscious Universe. Those two books, like, just kind of changed everything for me. And I mean, I guess if I can simplify it into just like a couple of words, what happens after we die? Something happens after we die. I'm 99% certain we don't just die and then we're gone. Like,
there's some crazy stories out there of like little kid remembers everything about their old life and their family, and you weren't supposed to get married. And
I've talked to a lot of the people on this podcast of like scientists and stuff that research in this area and people. I've spoke to Leslie about it actually.
Is Tyler Henry a guy in that field too, right?
He's a medium. Yeah.
Have you talked to him?
No, I haven't. I would like to. He's pretty well known. I don't know if he'd be interested in coming on my little podcast, but yeah, maybe one day. I did talk to a medium though. That episode, it will be out by the time I put yours out. So that episode
that'd be cool.
is out.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, a physical medium that was somebody that Leslie Kean knows. I found out about him via her book. But yeah, mediumship again is something I totally dismissed until that Netflix series and then Leslie's book, where in fact there's actually loads of evidence that they've done loads of science on it, like double blind, quadruple blind tests on these people to see if they can get genuine information, and everything points to there being something real going on there. The only question is, or the biggest question is, whether they're getting it from deceased people, like people that have died, or whether it's like via some kind of psi, like we talked about earlier, like some kind of telepathy, like reading the person that they're supposed to be. But that's why they do that quadruple blind stuff, so basically avoid
I need to get that book too. Then yeah, that sounds like a good one to have on deck. Of just like
I recommend that so strongly. Like that's the most important book I ever read. That Surviving Death, like literally like changed my life, like made me less afraid of dying and everything, and just started me on a whole new journey. So 100% recommend you read that. And yeah, if you ever have time, check out a few of my episodes on those topics.
I'm gonna watch that one, I think, next, the Kipner guy.
Stanley Krippner. He's a legend as well. You're gonna love Stanley. We talked to you about UFOs quite a bit as well at the end, so you're gonna like it. Basically, the last question I wanted to ask you is, if somebody that had never come across your channel before discovered it or goes and finds it now via this, which video would you encourage or recommend them to start with, or series of videos or whatever?
I would recommend them start with the one I did 2 ago, maybe 3 ago by the time this drops, how the CIA and Air Force created the UFO stigma, because and I think even just the intro, like, not to like gas myself up or anything, the intro is like pretty fun to like make and find all the clips of just, it starts with just decade after decade of audiences just instinctively reacting by laughing to when presented with any information about UFOs. And it just really kind of shows, like, it gets you in the mindset of like, we've kind of been programmed, and it's I think I do a good job of going through like evidence and like documents and everything cited in the description. So just showing how like the public perception on UFOs has been manipulated to get to a point where it's like that, right? Because like, yeah, that montage when you see them all like just back to back through the decades of just, and like oftentimes rude too, like in the face of someone like being totally serious. And so yeah, I think that I would recommend starting there.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll put that in the description. And yeah, you just made me think again that like that still kind of happens now a little bit. We're like in the final phases of that going out, right? Like if a TV talk show host in America says something about UFOs or aliens, people generally still kind of laugh. Like we're still in the kind of final dying out of that period.
Yeah.
This has been awesome, Red.
Dude,
to kind of
fun times.
I've really enjoyed it, and I love your channel. I love your videos, and I can't wait to watch the next one, and I hope you keep making them for a very, very long time.
Thanks. And I've got a good amount of your interviews. I've kind of, I think the Leslie Kean ones and the Ralph Blumenthal ones I for sure have. So yeah,
Leslie's not out yet, or it wasn't.
Oh, no?
It will be out by the time this is published. No.
Did you do one with both of them?
No.
Oh, maybe I'm sorry. I guess you've done Ralph then. I've definitely
I've done Ralph twice, yeah. But Leslie will be out by the time this is out as well. If it was mine, I did talk to somebody called Marjorie Woolacott, but she kind of has some.
Well then,
there,
that's exciting for you then. Did you already talk to her?
I already talked to her about surviving death stuff, but I'm talking to her again like very soon about UFOs.
Okay.
So yeah. Anyway, like I say, I really enjoyed this, man, and I really appreciate you giving me your time and conversation and sharing your knowledge and research and everything. It was fun.
Sweet, man. Thank you. Thanks for having me, and I'm totally down to do it again. Had a great time.
Awesome. Yeah, we will. Thank you for watching my conversation with the brilliant Red Panda Koala. I hope you enjoyed it. Please check out the description and subscribe to Red's channel via the link there. We'd love you to comment with your feedback on this conversation, and please let us know your favorite of Red's videos. Please subscribe to continue unraveling the universe with us, and consider contributing via Patreon to help us keep this channel going. Thank you.